Welcome to this episode of Relatively Famous, the podcast where I, Chip White, interview relatives of famous people. My famous relative is Vanna White of Wheel of Fortune. She's my sister, and I think that qualifies for a podcast to talk to other relatives. Today, we have a relative of a very famous boxer. Now, I met this guy at Podfest, and he's probably the one of the furthest in the relationships of people that we've had on the show, but he's got an interesting story and a great story. That's why I said, dude, you got to be on the podcast. His name is Michael Yonkura. He is the first cousin, twice removed, of the world heavyweight champ, Rocky Marciano. So we're going to find out a little bit about his family lineage. We're going to find out about Michael's story. But before we get to that, I want to thank our underwriting sponsor, visitmyrtlebeach.com. That's visitmyrtlebeach.com. Looking for the perfect family vacation. You want to get away pretty much any time of the year. There's always something to do there. In the winter, you can stroll the beach. In the summer, it's great swimming. There's, I think, 60 golf courses, mini golf, amusement parks, 2,000 restaurants. It's a great place to get away. And if you happen to be traveling with an autistic or a sensory sensitive traveler, you can learn more about traveling like that with Traveling the Spectrum on Peacock. And also you can go to visitmyrtlebeach.com and learn how Myrtle Beach caters to autistic and sensory sensitive travelers. That being said, I'm really excited to have Michael Yonkura on the show.
Relatively Famous podcast with Chip White.
Michael, welcome to Relatively Famous.
Okay, am I on now?
You are on now. Welcome.
All right, thanks for having me on here, Regis.
You're welcome, my man. So we met at Podfest down in Orlando, the podcast convention, which I think it's awesome. The funny thing is, I remember when I was walking in, and this is going to sound funny till we explain, there was a guy working on your foot, and I said, dude, you got your own NASCAR pit crew.
Oh, yeah. Well, that ended up being a whole podcast of my adventures down there in Orlando, and it all generated taking a red-eye flight from Columbus, Ohio, down to Orlando Thursday morning, and I found out the release valve on one of my prosthetics popped out, so my leg couldn't stay in place. So I was kind of dragging myself around like Igor from Young Frankenstein, and it was. If any of my friends would have saw it, they'd have been laughing their tails off. So
yeah, well, so the people that don't know, again, we're going to talk about it. Michael is a double amputee, and he was sitting there and a guy was adjusting his foot when I first walked in. And then later on, you were sitting outside and I'd walked outside and we started talking and you were telling me that you were related to Rocky Marciano. And we didn't get into the depths of it, but I said, dude, we need to talk because I think you'd make a great guest. And I know that there's a distance between you and Rocky, and of course he died years ago, but kind of give me a little bit of the family history that you know of with you and Rocky and the family.
yeah. Well, Rocky is my great-grandfather's first cousin. So, and actually he is right around the same age as my paternal grandmother. So, obviously Rocky's father was a lot older than my great-grandfather. So there was that relationship there, although they didn't really talk a whole lot. But my grandmother spoke of him so that they kind of knew each other, but it was more distant cousins, and they knew who they were and all that, but not very close, as it were.
Now, and I'm not a guy to dig up dirt, but at one point I did hear you say that the family wasn't real fond of him.
Well, my grandfather wasn't fond of my grandmother's side of the family. So it was more or less him being a coal miner about halfway between Pittsburgh and Morgantown, and my grandmother growing up in Pittsburgh, he kind of took her away from that. So I don't know if my grandfather ever really met Rocky, per se, but he didn't have a favorable opinion of his father-in-law. So...
All right. Now we're going to get the family out of the way because, Michael, we haven't talked a lot. We did talk some Podfest and stuff, but you have an interesting story. You're a double amputee.
Yes.
And you've had some other health issues. You're also a podcaster. Tell me about Michael and your journey to get us kind of up to date, and we'll find some questions based in that.
Okay, absolutely. Well, I am originally from Cleveland, Ohio, and I moved down to Columbus in 2011. It's actually I've been down here for 15 years, which seems like the longest 25 years of my life. But before I had moved down here, I was having diabetic issues with my left foot. And I was actually in the middle of a musical where I had to be in socks. It was kind of a scene in a bedroom where I was singing a song or whatever, and I'm leaving bloody footprints all over the place. And I was just so out of it. I was in diabetic shock at that point, but somehow I made it through doing that night's musical 2 weeks ago, and I'm like, I gotta go see a doctor about this. And stupid me, I had let it linger on for several months, and basically I went to urgent care. They took one look at my left foot and said, hospital now. And I went, and it was August of 2010 that I had my left foot amputated. And then the right foot ended up I actually had the surgery on Good Friday of 2021. So, again, I had let something linger on for a little while. And, I ended up being a double amputee with a kidney transplant in between. So I got the triple combo platter, as it were, Chip.
Wow, you did. Now, you were doing musical theater. Is acting something that you were doing as a hobby, or was that your lifestyle? I mean, your job, your lifestyle?
Well, no, it was community theater, so it was definitely a hobby. And I had done, I would say probably about 30 productions in the Cleveland area doing various roles. So, and actually, we were down in Podfest. I was talking to a couple of friends of mine, and we were talking musicals, and they turned to me and they go, what's your favorite musical? And it's a musical very few people have heard of outside of the Chicago area. It's called The Christmas Schooner. And if you ever get to see that, it's such a wonderful production. So a lot of good seafaring songs in it. And it's basically about a ship owner in the Upper Peninsula gets a letter from his cousin in Chicago saying they don't have Christmas trees to celebrate a traditional German Christmas. So he's got a whole forest full of trees. He has his crew cut them down, and they set sail on Lake Michigan in November in the worst type of weather. And turns out there's all sorts of nationalities who have Christmas trees as part of their tradition. So it ended up being a yearly tradition for him. And again, I can't say enough about that musical.
Now, what got you into music theater? Was it something you did as a kid? I
had dabbled with it as a kid, and then there was an opportunity when I was an adult and I was working like an actual regular job that, my hometown theater was doing a musical review of Cole Porter. So I was like, I'll go try out and see what that was like. I ended up playing Moss Hart in that particular musical, and it kind of snowballed from there. And as I was fond of saying, once you get the theater bug, you're cured.
Yeah, I cured for being in front of the stage, no matter how small the rest of your life, right, or how
Oh,
large.
yeah, absolutely. So well, I mean, even doing what I did down in Podfest, being on stage for a little bit, yeah, if you don't get the butterflies even a little bit, man, you're not human. So,
Okay, let's talk about Podfest and the stand up comedy act, because I was actually thinking about doing it, and all of a sudden it was already passed before I got up to sign up. Tell me what you did, and you were saying it's on the internet. Kind of tell me a little bit about that, and give me one of the jokes you used at Podfest.
okay. Well, that was the second year I actually did stand up. My first Podfest was in 2025, and there's a bit of a backstory behind that, but I used the same opening joke I did both years. And I said, because I was wearing shorts and my prosthetics were showing, so I go, depending on what I'm wearing, I either stand 6 feet tall or 4 feet 7.
That's a good one. I like that. And the being a double amputee, I have a nephew who he was in the Army and ended up getting injured, and he chose to have one of his below the knee amputated because it just wouldn't heal. What was the challenges for you, and how have you adapted in life? Because a lot of professions, once it happens, you can't do certain things like you used to could, or like when I used to love to surf, and I said, man, if I lost my leg, I don't know if I could ever surf again. The theater, you can. What's it? What's been the challenge? What's been the most uplifting experience that you've been able to share with someone else to help them with their journey as an amputee?
Well, I did work for a while with a prosthetic manufacturer here in Ohio. So one of the uplifting things is we would have patients come in testing out new products and everything like that, and they would go through my office, or at least pass by my office, and I would always talk to them about their situation and how they're getting along and everything like that. And for me, I think the biggest, I never looked at it as a challenge, to be perfectly honest with you. I'm like, okay, I got this situation. What am I going to do? And when I had the first amputation, it took probably about 6 or 7 months before I actually got fitted for a prosthetic. So, I mean, the big challenge for me was just kind of getting myself motored around in the wheelchair, and I was hopping around, putting the wheelchair in the back seat of the car and still driving around and stuff. So, once I got the prosthetic, I'm like, man, it's such a difference. And just being able to walk around, and the clinicians were amazed at how quickly I adapted. They're like, it was rare that I was able to walk around fairly normal. So, again, I don't see it as a challenge, but it was just, okay, situation, how am I going to get through it?
Now, what went through your mind when, all of a sudden the doctors go, hey, you know what? I hate to say this, but we're going to have to amputate your other foot.
Well, and as weird as it may sound, the second one was kind of easier to take than the first one. Because with the first one, they were like, well, we can slice off parts of the foot there, and you would still have part of the foot, or we can get it at below the knee and make sure the infection doesn't spread upward, so to become an above knee amputee. which is 10 times more difficult. So, yeah, I made my peace with God before the first surgery. And then the second surgery, I was like, God, you got my back. So I was definitely a lot more prepared for it, being 11 years apart like it was.
Yeah. Now, you use it in your humor? Do you use it? Do you like when? The best thing in life for me is you laugh. You laugh at everything that gets thrown at you because otherwise it can crush you. Do you use it? Do you use your double amputation as humor? And I want to talk about your podcast also, because I think that you deal with amputation, being a double amputee in your podcast also, correct?
Yes.
So tell me about your podcast, and to start with, then we'll go back to your stand-up.
Well, the podcast is called the No Feet Survival Guide, and I get the feeling, because I seem to be hitting decently in Australia, and I think they might be thinking it's something about hiking or something like that. So, but I was like, hey, a download's a download, in my opinion. So, but yeah, it's basically about my life's journey. And I actually started the podcast after the second amputation more as a catharsis for me, and just what I went through and how I used my God-given sense of humor to kind of laugh through it. And people were always amazed. Oh my gosh, you're such an inspiration. And I'm like, I don't know if I'm an inspiration, but, God's keeping me in the mindset to make fun of yourself, which I've always done before and after the amputation. So a lot of self-effacing humor helps a lot with this. So, but my podcast goes over just my experiences, not only with my transplant, with my amputations and things I've experienced over the internet. I even had my second most recent podcast was about adventures in podfesting. So just going over all the challenges of having the wardrobe malfunction on my leg and how I got through that. So
now, do you think you're an inspiration to other people? Because meeting you there and seeing you were a light. You had a smile on your face. You were feeling everyone. You weren't just sitting in the corner. You were all over the place. And look, I tend to walk fast, and I take for granted the fact that I can take big giant steps and walk fast, and not even meaning to. Do you think that you are an inspiration, even if you don't feel like you're doing it on purpose? Does that make sense what I'm asking?
I mean, people come up to me all the time and say, "Oh, you're such an inspiration," or people who are in a little more unfortunate situations than I am, and they're either, at the grocery store riding the scooter or just walking slow with a cane or walker, and they're like, "Man, I got no place to complain about this, because look what you're doing." And I've been called that, and I suppose I am. I try to just live my life like I did before all this happened. I like to talk to people. I hate calling people "hey you," so I try to get people's names, and even if I don't remember it right offhand. So that's, I might have lost the foot, but I didn't lose the mind, the heart, or the soul.
Right. And this kind of brings back to the flip side. Is it frustrating when, and I've used the word a couple times, people go, "Oh, you're an inspiration." It's like, do you sometimes want to go, "Look, I just me, man. I'm not an inspiration. I'm just living life the way with what life dealt me." And does it get a little like you want to just kind of not be mean, but like, I'm just like you, just with some mechanical legs.
Yep, yep. You hit the nail right on the head. And again, I'm like, no, no, no. I'm just living my life and plugging away. So, and that's kind of part of the reason for the podcast too, because some of the things I've gone over in my life, recently I got scammed in a cryptocurrency scheme, and I just want to make sure I give people proper warning on that, because even a savvy person like myself can get caught up in something like that. So yeah, it's kind of an inspiration of, one, what not to do, but two, they're throwing the lemons at me. I'm squeezing them out, throw a little Jack Daniels in there, and I got Lynchburg lemonade. So there you go.
That's funny. Okay, and the whole crypto thing is new to me. Like I said, we didn't have that one part of our conversation. Is it something you're comfortable talking about? Because I always have this feeling like I worried about my dad when he was older. I worried about my stepmom, and I get really frustrated by scammers and people that prey on that, and the whole cryptocurrency not being savvy. That's why I don't do it, because I don't want to, is it, how did it happen, if you want to talk about it, and what's the real lesson? Like you said, you're trying to help other people. You
Right.
want to, this is a new audience for it. Do you want to kind of run people through that, if that's okay?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's on one of my podcasts, the No Feet Survival Guide, shameless plug. But
First of all, I love the name, No Feet Survival, FEET. I think it's awesome, by the way.
Yep, thank you. And well, what ended up happening was, I was kind of looking for. I have a side hustle already as being a trivia host in the Columbus area on Tuesday nights. And I was kind of looking for a way to make some extra money. And yeah, I got a message on Telegram saying, oh, you can do this just by subscribing to YouTube videos. And then, you get paid $5 for it. I'm like, okay, that's easy enough. I'll subscribe and then unsubscribe the next day, and I'll be okay. So it was 10 tasks or 9 things you had to subscribe to. And then there was one right in the middle where it's like, oh, just subscribe to these merchants and it'll be an extra $40 for you. So, you do that, but then they start asking you to put in $10, and you get like 50 back, or 30% of doubling it up, or something along those lines. So I'm like, okay, in the first couple of days it went without a hitch. And then the third day they're like, well, now there's a second task where you need to put in $200. I'm like, okay. And you put in the 200, you get this money back, and plus 30% or whatever it was. The next day you did the same thing, and luckily I didn't move the money around or anything like that. But then the third one, they were asking for like $800, and I was like, oh, I just got myself caught up in that. And yeah, and I did it, and then they were looking for more and more after that. But yeah, anything you get on Telegram or WhatsApp, I have 2 main theories in life. One is the Ronald Reagan approach, trust but verify. And then there's the Stone Cold Steve Austin one, when he said, GTA, don't trust anybody. So I didn't keep those in mind, and I'm out $1,000 on that. So, but the way I look at it, I try to be a half full glass of water, or in my case, green tea, and Yeah, it could have it could have been a lot worse. So, I know there's people who've lost tens of thousands of dollars. So, me losing $1,000, it hurts me a lot, but it could have been a lot worse.
Yeah, I get those WhatsApp and different things, and I just delete most of them and report it as junk. Hey, in your defense, 30 plus years ago, before the internet, when it was penny stocks, the whole Wolf of Wall Street, Belford,
Yep.
what's his name? I took a call at work, and the guy, $1,000, and I said, dude, are you going to scam me? And I'll just give you the $1,000. Just be honest. He goes, oh no, it's going to be good. And I fell for it. And in the '90s, I lost $1,000 on penny stocks, which is basically the same as the cryptocurrency. You gotta. If it sounds too good to be true, I hate to say it, but majority of times I think that's the case. It is too good to be true. And
Yep, absolutely. And I'll add one more thing. And I kind of saw this on an episode of Dateline NBC where all these women were getting scammed by this one guy for tens of thousands of dollars. He was buying cars and jewelry and country club memberships and all that. And to a person, every last one of those women were professionals. They were smart. They knew how to save their money and things like that. And I've been trying to be the same way. I'm a little down on my luck at this point, but the challenge is finding the smart ones and getting them to go in this, that kind of situation. And that kind of gets them off, if that makes sense. So.
yeah, no, it does. And, and I think, we're all looking to add to our income, and something's like, okay, well, that makes sense. If I can do that, it's, I think a lot of people fall victim to it. And I think I'm glad that you're talking about it on here, because I hope that some of our listeners and viewers will go, oh, you know what? I was just about to fall for that, and now I know not to. And, I hate that sometimes we have to lose so others can learn, but I appreciate your honesty in sharing that. Comedy. You've done the 2-3 minutes at Podfest. You put it up on YouTube, which we're going to put the link in the show notes. Is that something you want to do? Is be a stand-up comic?
I have always had a little inkling for that, and yeah, I kind of started writing some other material or thinking of some other things, and just some of the life challenges I've gone through and kind of making light of those, along with, there's a lot of comic fodder out there, with all the serious stuff going on. It can certainly be, I think Johnny Carson would have had a ball making fun of a lot of the stuff today that's going on. So, and Letterman to some extent. So, I got to mention this. So, my memories of your sister, there's two that stick out in my mind. One was her appearance on an early late night show with Letterman, where he had the little board game of Wheel of Fortune, and he spins the wheel and what have you, and your sister's there sitting in the chair clapping along. Oh, that might have been one of the funniest moments on Letterman. It was so cute that, she was just being herself. And I love that. And then the other memory I have was, I caught enough Wheel of Fortune followed by Jeopardy to last a lifetime. But I'll never forget, at the end of one show, Sajak is sitting there talking about, oh, I put relish and chili and cheese and pickles on my hot dog. Your sister, God bless her, she goes, I put ketchup and mustard on my hot dog. And Sajak looks at her like she's got turds hanging out of her mouth or something, like, what are you, some sort of heathen? I love that simplicity out of your sister.
That's how we
I
grew up
mean,
eating. That's how we still both eat our hot dogs, mustard and
yeah.
ketchup.
I mean, well, no, I go ketchup and stadium mustard,
Yeah.
which was kind of a Cleveland thing. So, but it's just basically a brown mustard. So
Yeah.
instead of the yellow,
Yeah,
but
we were the yellow. Now, in your comedy, as you were saying, dude, I think you ought to throw in a little bit of boxing humor in, the first cousin twice removed of Rocky, and I think there's someone to work into that.
well, you
Lean
saw.
heavy into it.
I was gonna say you saw us doing the coming to America routine. You know, outside, and he's going, "Oh, there they go." Every time somebody talk about boxing, they got to put Rocky Marciano out their ass. And then I'm there like, he beat Joe Louis's ass. Joe Louis was 75 years old when he fought Rocky Marciano. So I always think of that. And yeah, I don't know if you know this, but a few months before his death, Rocky Marciano and Muhammad Ali got together, and they were kind of sparring. I mean, Marciano had been retired about 14 years at that point, but they did like a computer simulated boxing match. What would happen if Rocky Marciano fought Muhammad Ali? Now, and it was released in 1970, but they did it a few years before Rocky's plane crash. So I ended up looking that up a little bit. I'm like, because Muhammad Ali's one of my heroes, just for, the stance he took and just for the way he performed in the ring. So, and I never knew this until till actually I talked to you. So I was like, I'll look up, just see some stuff here. But they actually had a computer simulated game, for 1969, 1970. But they had Rocky winning by knockout in the 8th round when it was released in the United States. And then they had Ali winning in the European release by TKO in the 9th. So, I mean, to me, that's absolutely fascinating. And it goes into something that scratches my itch as far as LeBron versus Jordan, or Tiger Woods versus Arnold Palmer, things like that. So
I wonder what AI would say about it today if they would recreate it. But
I did one for one of my loves of professional wrestling. So I actually had a match between Nature Boy Ric Flair, which I'm sure you're familiar with, being in the Carolinas there.
Oh, yeah.
Match between him and John Cena. So, and they had Ric Flair winning because he's the dirtiest player in the game.
Oh, Rick. He's funny. We're getting close to running out of time. So I'm going to ask you a question. Give me some life advice that you think I could use.
My biggest advice is to keep your faith with God, because believe you me, I mean, I'm facing challenges today as facing challenges 15 years ago. And, when the first amputation happened, I'm a Catholic. I went to church every Sunday, but I just didn't have that gripping faith that I have today. So, and God's put me through every little ringer that can come up to a person, probably a few other people. But yeah, I keeping the faith is probably first and foremost, because all the other hurdles can just seem like speed bumps.
That's good. I'm going to have to remember that one. And now, what is the one question that I didn't ask you, or something we didn't talk about you wish we'd have talked about?
No, Wow, you covered we went over a lot of stuff, but yeah, I mean, if you ever invite me back, I'll give you the backstory on the kidney transplant, going through dialysis for 2 years, 2 years and a month, and then I actually got my kidney 2 days after Christmas. So you talk about a Christmas present. That's the ultimate.
That is a great Christmas present, man. And you know what? I'm going to continue to wish you great health. And I'm going to look forward to hopefully seeing you at Podfest 2027. Maybe there'll be some other podcast conventions we'll cross paths. But Michael, it's been a pleasure, and I think it's fun that chatting with you. I like the big gap in the relatively famous between you and Rocky, but you have a great story. No Feet podcast. I'm going to put the link in our show notes, and I'm grateful for you taking your time with me today, Michael.
Oh, thank you so much, Chip. It was such a pleasure meeting you. You, as always, I haven't met anybody from the South yet who hasn't been super gracious. So thank you so much.
Well, you're from Cleveland. I have family in Medina, and half of Ohio spends their summers in Myrtle Beach, where I grew up. So I think I knew everybody in the state of Ohio in the 1970s. So.
Okay. Well, I'm from Brunswick originally, so There you go.
And the David Letterman story, and David will probably kill me. Vanna might even kill me, but I remember Vanna was on the show. And at the end, when everybody was there, he actually goosed her. I don't know if people remember what being goosed is, but David Letterman.
No, I don't remember that. Oh my goodness.
No, it was no one knew it, so he goosed her.
Oh.
So she comes back on later, and she said, "I've got a surprise," and they're like, "Nope, you can't. He doesn't like surprises." This is why she was probably never on the show again. She snuck it out in her jacket, and she said, and she had made this T-shirt that said, "I goosed Vanna White," and she gave it to him on the air. And he kind of played it off, but he was not happy. I think that's why he never invited her back. But
oh my gosh.
That's my David Letterman story. Anyway, thank you, Michael. We certainly appreciate your time, my friend.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. And look forward to seeing a lot of your podcasts, too.
Thank you. We just hope you'll share this, and we'll let you know when it's going to drop air. I don't know what the term is, but we'll be in touch about it.
All right. Well, thank you, my friend. You take care.
Thanks, buddy. Okay. I thoroughly enjoyed that. Meeting Michael at Podfest, he really is a light. I think that's what kind of started this conversation at Podfest, where like, hey, let's have him on the show. I learned a lot about it, and I hope you guys enjoyed it and will listen to No Feet Survival podcast. And Michael, thanks for being on the show. I want to thank you, the listener, the viewer. Without you, our podcast is just dead air. I'm grateful that you take the time, and I'm humble that you take the time to share with us. I want to thank Nelco Media and Nelco Comics. Nelco Comics for the great comic book location. If you're looking for a comic book and you happen to be in San Antonio or on their website, that's Nelco Comics here in San Antonio. I also want to thank visitmyrtlebeach.com. That's visitmyrtlebeach.com. That's my hometown area. Great family vacation spot. Amazing food, amazing golf, an amazing beach coastal line. Water in the summer is great for kids. I don't know. Just check out visitmyrtlebeach.com and plan your perfect vacation. And if you happen to be related to someone famous or know someone related to someone famous, I'm always looking for guests. And you can reach me at podcastrelativelyfamous@gmail.com. That's podcastrelativelyfamous@gmail.com. Thanks.
You've been listening to Relatively Famous with Chip White. Please like and subscribe to Relatively Famous with Chip White.